It was the first Thursday of December, 2010. The streets of Melbourne bustled with the typical hum of a city getting ready for the weekend. But inside one of the city's most exclusive residential towers, something unthinkable was about to happen. At approximately 7 p.m., a building concierge would make a chilling discovery: the broken body of a young woman, just 24 years old, crushed in a garbage collection room, blooded and surrounded by shards of shattered glass and refuse. That woman was Phoebe Handsjuk, and the place where she was found wasn't just any location. It was at the bottom of a garbage chute. A chute only 22 centimeters wide. What happened next would divide a nation, confound forensic experts, and haunt a grieving family for years. Because nobody could answer the one question that mattered most. Did Phoebe climb in willingly, or did someone send her there? Phoebe Handsjuk wasn't a name known to the public until it was. But to those who loved her, she was unforgettable. Born in 1986 in Melbourne to parents Natalie and Len, Phoebe was the kind of child who seemed older than her years. She had a fierce emotional intelligence and a poet's heart. Her thoughts spilled across journals and paintings. Teachers described her as highly creative but deeply introspective. Phoebe was tall, athletic, and striking. She played soccer competitively and excelled in martial arts. She was independent, spiritual, and deeply curious about the world. But that curiosity, as is often the case with artists, came with a burden. As a teenager, Phoebe struggled with anxiety and depression. She was introduced to alcohol and prescription medication early on, experimenting in ways that would later become a concern. Yet no one who knew her would ever describe her as self-destructive. Her mother Natalie said, "Phoebe had demons, yes, but she also had dreams, and she was fighting for them." At the age of 23, Phoebe met Anthony Hempel, Ant as he was known among friends. He was a successful events promoter from a high-profile Melbourne family, 40 years old, suave, polished, and connected. His father was a former Supreme Court judge, his stepmother a county court judge. They met at a party. Within weeks, she moved into his luxury apartment on the 12th floor of Balencea, a glittering glass high-rise that boasted private lifts and panoramic city views. To outsiders, they looked like opposites. He was organized and image-conscious. She was spontaneous, messy, and artistic. Some friends said Ant brought stability to her life. Others said he was controlling. According to messages later recovered from her phone, Phoebe often wrote about feeling watched, monitored, and trapped. One disturbing quote from her personal journal read, "I am like a bird in a beautiful cage. The food is good, the view is stunning, but I can't fly." In the week leading up to December 2nd, things were unraveling. Phoebe had recently gotten into trouble for damaging her laptop during what was described as a mental health crisis. She was also drinking more heavily and had confessed to friends she was unhappy and wanted to leave Ant. 3 days before her death, she began Googling removalists. On December 1st, the night before she died, Phoebe had dinner with her father Len. According to Len, she was quiet but clear-headed. She talked about moving out and starting fresh. There were no signs, he said, of someone planning to end their life. She hugged him goodbye and promised they'd catch up that weekend. It would be the last time he ever saw her alive. December 2nd, 2010, the day everything changed. What happened on that fateful day is still the subject of speculation, debate, and agony. Anthony left for work around 8:30 a.m. Phoebe was still asleep. Security footage later shows Phoebe leaving the apartment around 11 a.m., then returning about 12 p.m. with 2 shopping bags and a box of noodles. She's seen struggling slightly. Her movements are slow. Some experts believe she may have already taken medication or alcohol by that point. Around 12:30 p.m., the building's cleaner hears loud arguing from inside the apartment. At 6 p.m., building security logs a fire alarm reset triggered from the 12th floor trash room. And around the same time, the apartment's internal internet activity abruptly stops. Then, silence. At around 7 p.m., the building concierge receives a call from a cleaner. Something's wrong in the ground floor refuse room. When staff arrive, they find a horrifying scene. The room smells of blood and garbage. The floor is slick. A body, badly broken, lies on the ground. It's Phoebe. She's missing a shoe, her jeans are partly pulled down, and her right foot is nearly severed. Her right leg is broken in multiple places. Blood is smeared across the room, along with glass shards from a broken panel she smashed through upon landing. A crushed vodka bottle lies nearby. The assumption: she had fallen through the garbage chute, a 12-story vertical drop ending in a steel compactor. But how? When police arrived, they were told by Anthony that Phoebe had been mentally unwell and had previously self-harmed. This would set the tone of the initial investigation. Despite multiple oddities, lack of fingerprints on the garbage chute, no CCTV of her approaching it, and the logistics of fitting into such a narrow space while heavily intoxicated, the case was quickly written off as an accident. Authorities theorized that Phoebe, in a drugged state, climbed into the chute on her own and fell. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, and no bruising that suggested restraint. But forensic pathologist Dr. Simon Rule noted something odd. Phoebe's injuries were not consistent with someone who braced for a fall. They were consistent with someone unconscious before impact. Still, the investigation was rushed. No crime scene photographs were taken of the apartment. The chute wasn't swabbed for prints. Anthony wasn't formally interrogated. By the next morning, a coroner had declared the incident death by misadventure. To be continued in part. The garbage chute at the Balencea Apartments was no ordinary disposal unit. It was a vertical steel shaft, over 12 floors high, leading from each residential hallway down to a private collection room on the ground floor. Each opening was just 22 centimeters wide and 60 centimeters long, about the width of a laptop screen. It was designed for bags of trash, not fully grown humans. Yet somehow, authorities believed Phoebe Handsjuk, at 5 feet 7 inches, athletic, and likely intoxicated, managed to climb into it voluntarily. That assumption would soon become one of the most debated points in Australian criminal history. To access the chute, Phoebe would have had to leave the apartment, walk down the corridor to the garbage room, open a heavy steel door, lift the chute flap mounted over a meter above the floor, sit or crouch down in front of it, maneuver both legs and torso in feet first entry, slide herself inside in complete darkness, all while under the influence of a cocktail of alcohol and sedatives. Now ask yourself, does that sound accidental? It didn't to many experts, including forensic pathologist Professor Stephen Cordner. In a later analysis, he remarked, "The garbage chute is narrow, elevated, and awkward to access. A voluntary entry would be extremely difficult, particularly for someone impaired." And then there were the injuries. Phoebe's body bore the trauma of the 12-story fall. Her right foot was almost severed, believed to be from contact with the compactor blades at the base. Her pelvis was shattered, skull bruised, and leg bones snapped. But some things didn't match a typical alive and falling victim. No bruises on her hands or arms that suggested grabbing or bracing. No injuries consistent with struggling against the tight metal chute. No friction burns from entering the shaft. The toxicology report revealed blood alcohol concentration of 0.16, over 3 times the legal driving limit. Presence of Stilnox, zolpidem, a powerful sleep aid with known side effects including disorientation, hallucinations, and sleepwalking. Traces of antidepressants. Authorities proposed that Phoebe may have sleepwalked into the chute while under the influence of Stilnox. But forensic toxicologist Professor Olaf Drummer disagreed. It's highly unlikely she could complete a complex physical task like climbing into a garbage chute while sleepwalking, particularly in combination with high alcohol levels. By the time police searched the apartment, something had changed. The apartment was clean. Too clean. Wine glasses were washed. Ashtrays emptied. Blood cleaned up. Anthony Hampel said he had tied it up before investigators arrived, claiming he didn't realize Phoebe had died until the concierge called. But one major issue cast doubt on that. Phoebe's blood was found on the computer mouse. It was also found on a door frame and in the lounge. These were signs of a struggle, or at the very least, signs she had been injured inside the apartment before she ever entered the chute. Even more suspicious? Her phone, her lifeline, was left behind. A woman like Phoebe, known for texting friends and keeping journals, left her phone on the kitchen counter while descending to her death. Despite the building being covered in cameras, no footage exists of Phoebe entering the 12th floor garbage room. None. There's footage of her entering the lobby earlier that day, walking erratically, visibly impaired, but not a single image places her near the chute at the time of the fall. This raises 3 haunting possibilities. 1. The camera was malfunctioning or disabled. 2. She never went to the chute room on her own. 3. Someone escorted or forced her there and erased the footage. Building staff later confirmed that some security footage was automatically overwritten and no backups existed. Anthony, a man with deep ties to Melbourne's legal and tech community, never explained how that might have happened. The theories begin. In the days following Phoebe's death, her family was devastated, but skeptical. Her grandfather, Lorne Campbell, was no stranger to crime. A retired homicide detective, he spent decades investigating suspicious deaths for the Victoria Police. He immediately sensed something was wrong. It didn't make sense, he later told reporters. Phoebe didn't climb into that chute. Someone put her there, or someone let it happen. Lorne began a private investigation, hiring independent experts to analyze the apartment layout, chute design, and injuries. Their conclusion: there is no way Phoebe could have entered the chute in her condition without assistance, force, or staging. And if that's true, then there's only one other possibility. #scales #Anthony Hampel, the man at the center. Anthony Hampel, Phoebe's boyfriend of 18 months, was a respected member of the Melbourne elite. He was the son of George Hampel, a former Supreme Court judge, and stepson to Felicity Hampel, a sitting judge. Ant had a spotless record. He ran a successful events company. He knew politicians, celebrities, and lawyers. He was charming, smooth-talking, and persuasive. But Phoebe's friends told a different story. They recalled her crying after fights, hiding bruises, talking about feeling trapped. In one disturbing message, she told a friend, "I want to leave, but I'm scared. He gets so angry." There were no police reports, no public signs of abuse, but the private messages told a tale of emotional manipulation, surveillance, and fear. The night of her death, Ant claimed he came home to a quiet apartment. No signs of distress. He didn't notice she was missing until the concierge called, and he never checked the chute room himself. It took nearly 3 years for a formal inquest to be held. In 2014, Victorian coroner Peter White issued his findings. Despite acknowledging the bizarre circumstances, he ruled Phoebe's death an accidental misadventure. He concluded, Phoebe Handsjuk died after voluntarily climbing into the garbage chute while affected by drugs and alcohol. There is no evidence of foul play. But not everyone agreed. To be continued in Part 3, the questions they never answered.